Is that a sign that you are moving away, your White House is moving away, from this emphasis on bipartisanship? And what went wrong? Did you underestimate how hard it would be to change the way Washington worked? Mr. Obama, I don't think I underestimated it. I don't think the American people underestimated it. They understand that there have been a lot of bad habits built up here in Washington. And it's going to take time to break down some of those bad habits. You know, when I made a series of overtures to the Republicans going over to meet with both Republican caucuses. You know, putting 3 Republicans in my cabinet, something that is unprecedented. Making sure that they were invited here to the White House. To talk about the economic recovery plan. All those were not designed simply to get some short-term votes. They were designed to try to build up some trust over time. And I think that, as I continue to make these overtures, over time, hopefully that will be reciprocated. But understand the bottom line that I've got right now. Which is what's happening to the people of Elkhart and what's happening across the country. I can't afford to see Congress play the usual political games. What we have to do right now is deliver for the American people. So my bottom line when it comes to the recovery package is send me a bill that creates or saves 4 million jobs. Because everybody has to be possessed with a sense of urgency about putting people back to work. Making sure that folks are staying in their homes, that they can send their kids to college. That doesn't negate the continuing efforts that I'm going to make to listen and engage with my Republican colleagues. And hopefully the tone that I've taken, which has been consistently civil and respectful, will pay some dividends over the long term. There are going to be areas where we disagree and there are going to be areas where we agree. As I said, the one concern I've got on the stimulus package in terms of the debate and listening to some of what's been said in Congress is that there seems to be a set of folks who I don't doubt their sincerity who just believe that we should do nothing. Now, if that's their opening position or their closing position in negotiations, then we're probably not going to make much progress, because I don't think that's economically sound and I don't think that's what the American people expect, is for us to stand by and do nothing. There are others who recognize that we've got to do a significant recovery package, but they're concerned about the mix of what's in there. And if they're sincere about it, then I'm happy to have conversations about this tax cut. Versus that tax cut or this infrastructure project versus that infrastructure project. The latest on President Obama, the new administration and other news from Washington and around the nation. But what I've been concerned about is some of the language that's been used suggesting that this is full of pork and this is wasteful government spending, so on and so forth. First of all, when I hear that from folks who presided over a doubling of the national debt, then, I just want them to not engage in some revisionist history. I inherited the deficit that we have right now and the economic crisis that we have right now. Number 2 is that, although there are some programs in there that I think are good policy, some of them aren't job creators. I think it's perfectly legitimate to say that those programs should be out of this particular recovery package, and we can deal with them later. But when they start characterizing this as pork without acknowledging that there are no earmarks in this package, something again, that was pretty rare over the last 8 years, then you get a feeling. That maybe we're playing politics instead of actually trying to solve problems for the American people. So I'm going to keep on engaging. I hope that as we get the Senate and the House bills together, that everybody is willing to give a little bit. I suspect that the package that emerges is not going to be 100% of what I want. But my bottom line is, are we creating 4 million jobs? And are we laying the foundation for long-term economic growth? This is another concern that I've had in some of the arguments that I'm hearing. When people suggest that what a waste of money to make federal buildings more energy efficient, why would that be a waste of money? We're creating jobs immediately by retrofitting these buildings or weatherizing 2 million Americans' homes, as was called for in the package. So that right there creates economic stimulus, and we are saving taxpayers. When it comes to federal buildings, potentially $2 billion. In the case of homeowners, they will see more money in their pockets. and we're reducing our dependence on foreign oil in the Middle East. Why wouldn't we want to make that kind of investment? Now, maybe philosophically you just don't think that the federal government should be involved in energy policy. I happen to disagree with that. I think that's the reason why we find ourselves importing more foreign oil right now than we did back in the early 70s, when OPEC first formed. And we can have a respectful debate about whether or not we should be involved in energy policy making. But don't suggest that somehow that's wasteful spending. That's exactly what this country needs. The same applies when it comes to information technologies and healthcare. We know that healthcare is crippling businesses and making us less competitive. As well as breaking the banks of families all across America. And part of the reason is we've got the most inefficient healthcare system. Imaginable. We're still using paper. We're still filing things in triplicate. Nurses can't read the prescriptions that doctors have written out. Why wouldn't we want to put that on an electronic medical record that will reduce error rates? Reduce our long-term cost of healthcare, and create jobs right now. Education, yet another example. The suggestion is, why should the federal government be involved in school construction? Well, I visited a school down in South Carolina that was built in the 1850s. Kids are still learning in that school as best they can. when the railroad when it's right next to a railroad. And when the train runs by the whole building shakes and the teacher has to stop teaching for a while. The auditorium is completely broken down and they can't use it. So why wouldn't we want to build state-of-the-art schools with science labs that are teaching our kids the skills they need for the 21st century, that will enhance our economy and, by the way, right now will create jobs. The latest on President Obama, the new administration and other news from Washington and around the nation. So, we can differ on some of the particulars, but again, the question I think that the American people are asking is, do you just want government to do nothing, or do you want it to do something? If you want it to do something, then we can have a conversation. But doing nothing, that's not an option from my perspective. All right. Chuck Todd. Where's Chuck? Question, thank you, Mr. President. In your opening remarks, you talked about that if your plan works the way you want it to work. It's going to increase consumer spending. But isn't consumer spending, or overspending, how we got into this mess? And if people get money back into their pockets, do you not want them saving it or paying down debt first? Before they start spending money into the economy? Mr. Obama, well, first of all, I don't think it's accurate to say that consumer spending got us into this mess. What got us into this mess initially were banks taking exorbitant wild risks with other people's monies, based on shaky assets. And because of the enormous leverage, where they had $1 worth of assets and they were betting $30 on that $1. What we had was a crisis in the financial system. That led to a contraction of credit, which in turn meant businesses couldn't make payroll or make inventories. Which meant that everybody became uncertain about the future of the economy. So people started making decisions accordingly. Reducing investments, initiating layoffs, which in turn made things worse. Now, you are making a legitimate point, Chuck, about the fact that our savings rate has declined. And this economy has been driven by consumer spending for a very long time. And that's not going to be sustainable. You know, if all we're doing is spending and we're not making things. Then over time, other countries are going to get tired of lending us money. And eventually the party's going to be over. Well, in fact, the party now is over. And so the sequence of how we're approaching this is as follows. Our immediate job is to stop the downward spiral. And that means putting money into consumers' pockets. It means loosening up credit. It means putting forward investments that not only employ people, immediately but also lay the groundwork for long-term economic growth. And that, by the way, is important, even if you're a fiscal conservative. Because the biggest problem we're going to have, with our federal budget, is if we continue a situation in which there are no tax revenues. Because economic growth is plummeting at the same time as we've got more demands for unemployment insurance. We've got more demands for people who've lost their health.